In today's episode, we sit down with the Midwestern Spiritual Sparkplug herself, Marilyn Harper. Join us as Marilyn breaks down the purpose of life, the power of numerology, the difference between spiritual connection versus ascension, and the take-home lessons for 2020. Make sure to stay with us until the end to hear Marilyn's predictions for 2021. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us again as we continue our series of science, mysticism, and beyond, humanity's next phase of evolution. Today's guest is Marilyn Harper, and I'll talk about Marilyn in just a moment here. But I was recently listening to a meditation that I wanted to talk about. So one of the people that we listen to sometimes is Jacqueline Hobbs, and her website is oraclegirl.com. And she does a lot of different meditations, or as she calls them, purifications. And they're really interesting. So her basic idea is that in order to connect back to that source or to that divine self, we essentially need to purify all of the different things all of the patterns that we have been inundated with, more or less. So that in order to really arrive back at that core of who we are, we need to basically cleanse or purify all of these patterns and conditionings that we have been brought up with from this lifetime and even past lifetimes that have just built up, that to a point where basically we don't even know who we are when we're just running through all of these different patterns. And one of the meditations that my wife and I were doing recently was on technology and the internet. And it was really interesting because she goes through so many different areas of our lives that we basically are trying to detoxify from this programming that we've just sort of been inundated with. And one of the things that was really interesting is she was talking about technology and the internet. And one of the things she talked about was how to basically mitigate any of the dangerous aspects of technology that we may be exposed to. And so I want to read the list of things that she talked about, because I think this is really important. This is one of the things that we should be able to mitigate on a regular basis, because there is harmful stuff associated with technology, but there's also a lot of beneficial stuff that we want to be able to access with our technology. So these were the pieces of her advice through the purification track that we listened to. So number one was to, whenever you are not using your cell phone, to turn it off completely. So not just on airplane mode, but to turn it off absolutely completely. When we go to bed, make sure that we put the phone turned off completely in a separate area. That was number two. So number one, turn it off completely. Two, make sure that you put it in a separate area like the living room or somewhere, turned off completely. Now, she even suggested to even put like almost like a blanket over top of it, like it almost made me think of like a Faraday cage type of blanket around it to offset anything else that might be from that. And then four, she said to make sure that you have a device that turns the modem off at night, or just turn the modem off at night. I think I've mentioned this before, that my wife and I, that we have a timer set on our modem, so it automatically goes off at a certain time, like say 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and then it turns back on again at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock or whatever you want to set it to. But it automatically does that for you. So you're just not being bathed in that EMF overnight when you don't need to be. And then the fifth thing she said was to make sure that you have some sort of proven EMF mitigating technology. And this is something I listened to just the other day before I'd even learned about EMF Harmonized, but this is the technology that we use. Now, in order to check out EMF Harmonized, just go to the website, Inspire Health Podcast, and click on Get 10% Off Powerful EMF and 5G Protection Technology. Get it now. It'll take you right to the website. And then if you check that link, you should automatically get 10% off your order when you go to my cart. So all you would do is go to your cart, click proceed to checkout, and then once you click proceed to checkout, that will take you, and it should show the discount code DRLOKEN, Dr. Loken. Now, it should automatically take it off. If by any chance when you do the link and it doesn't, just make sure that you plug in Dr. Loken is the discount code, and you will automatically get 10% off your order. So check them out. We use them on all of our products, our cell phone, our tablets, our computer. We put them on the router. And we follow all of Jacqueline Hobbs' recommendations that I just finished mentioning to you. If you want to know more about that, check out oraclegirl.com. And we follow all of the recommendations that I just mentioned to you that were mentioned to us by Jacqueline Hobbs or Oracle Girl. And if you want to learn more about her work, go check her out at oraclegirl.com. She's been a real asset to us over the last while. We've really enjoyed doing her different meditation or her purification tracks. All right. In today's episode, we talked to Marilyn Harper. And Marilyn Harper is a spiritual teacher. She's an author. She wrote a book called Double Digits, where she talks about double digits that you might see. This is something that I found really interesting because, and I talk about this in our episode, but over a decade ago, I started seeing these specific number sequences regularly. And I mean, at first, it was really freaking me out because I didn't understand what was going on, but I would see it in emails to me, and I would always randomly see these certain number sequences on my phone or on cars in front of me, and their license plates had them. And so I'd see 1111 or 111 or 222 really routinely. And then I actually started looking into it, and there's an aspect of these around numerology, and there's an aspect of these around spirit numbers. So I found it really interesting. So Marilyn gets into all of that. She shares with us her wisdom. She channels her collective named Adironda and travels often with Lee Carroll, who channels for Cryon, and they have a lot of really beautiful wisdom that they share. And so this episode is, Marilyn's really fun. She's light. She's got such a nice way of sharing her insights and her wisdom. And I hope that you all really enjoy this episode. And we are doing lives with all of our guests. So specifically, we're going to be doing a live event after Marilyn's episode, usually within the week of that person's episode. We will do a live event where we encourage you all to follow the YouTube channel, write down as many questions as you can that we will ask Marilyn specifically, and then during the live event, people can write in more questions during the live, but send them to us in advance so we can start to collect them. Those will be the questions that we will ask her directly, and then tune in and see if you can get your questions answered. So our live event with Marilyn is going to be January 29th at 1:30 Pacific Standard Time, which I believe is 3:30 Central Time. So January 29th, 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Join Tay and I as we do a live event with Marilyn and answer all of your questions. So write them in at the YouTube channel. Go to Dr. Jason Loken ND on YouTube, and you will be able to plug in your questions on her episode. Just scroll down and plug in your questions as a post or a comment. Okay. All right, everybody, enjoy the episode. This is a really fun episode for us to do with Marilyn. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast. And as we continue on with our series, Science, Mysticism, and Beyond, Humanity's Next Phase of Evolution. Today's guest is Marilyn Harper. Marilyn is also known as the Midwestern Spiritual Sparkplug, or the Bette Midler of the mystical movement. I love that. Marilyn is a renowned public speaker, facilitator, and spiritual teacher. She's invited back again and again as a featured speaker at conferences, retreats, and workshops for her warm, authentic, and offbeat stories of personal transformation, delivered in a way that's hilarious, heartfelt, and inspiring. With an insightful blend of love and laughter, Marilyn has a unique gift to tap directly into the participants' emotional core and then guide them gently through the experience of release. She will inspire you to take action. Marilyn has also developed her own certified course in holographic healing, an alternative form of energy healing, as well as a method for teaching people how to channel in her 12-module course, Channelers Academy. Marilyn's goal is to provide phenomenal experiences around the world and practical methods to help people laugh, love, experience deep joy, as well as live their best life ever. Marilyn, what a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, and you keep pretty good company, as I see. So I'm honored to be considered a part of
my wife? Or...
Yes,
we do. We have a great lineup, and we're so thrilled that you could be a part of it.
Yeah,
well, thank you.
We decided to put this series together because, and we've mentioned this a couple different times, but in our journey, especially over this last year, this 2020, which we'll get into more in just a little bit, we just found we were being drawn to different information that just resonated with us at a certain level of truth, and that we wanted to be a part of. And it felt much more empowering and more inspired, and it gave us a bigger perspective of what was going on. And I felt like both of us felt like that was what we needed, and that was nourishing to our souls. And so we decided if it was that nourishing for us, then we wanted to bring that group together and share it with other people that might not be quite so aware of the information. And then after getting in, it was just, one person after another. We'd sort of listen to one person, and then all of a sudden they'd be mentioning someone else. And then we start to listen to another person's work. And it was just this like I said to Taya earlier, it
Synchronistic.
was this synchronicities and this feeling of kind of like a spiritual family that started to develop. So, and you're a part of that, Marilyn. So we're super happy to have you here.
Well, I feel a part of that family. I feel like I've met you two before on more than one occasion. So it is surprising how through the spiritual world there's like this commonality thread as we're all working to help the consciousness of the planet raise and all doing our part to move into that arena. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So for people that aren't as familiar with your work at the moment, and I'm sure they're going to be more familiar after because they'll want to check everything out after we finish our interview today. But can you tell us a little bit about how everything works and sort of your journey in becoming a spiritual channel, and if there's a specific person or entity that you channel and what that experience is like, just for people that aren't too familiar with that world?
Well, it has been an interesting adventure over the past many years. In the 90s, I was, selling advertising for a country western radio station in Missouri. I was deacon in the Christian church. I was really as normal as they come. And I experienced a major transformation. Some would call it a walk-in, but it is a major transformation. And if it didn't happen to me, I don't think I would have ever believed that it was possible. After it took me about 3 years to wake up from that, and I set up myself on the spiritual path. And, I guess I volunteered to be all that I am. And I said, I will go anywhere, I will do anything, I will say anything, as long as you can prove to me that you're source moving through me. And I was, attuned to Reiki level 1 and then Karuna Reiki. And with all of that came an ability that I didn't know at the time was a bit unusual, to be able to see or sense into people's bodies, into their form. And that was pretty interesting. And then when I began doing energy work with people, I did what they call automatic or guided writing. So I was very familiar with my own guidance system and my own energy of guides. And we all have guides or angels or whatever that are communicating from the light to us. And I was familiar with that energy. But when I started doing energy work, other beings would choose to come in. And the first was Serapis Bey, who's one of the Ascended Masters. And of course, at the time, I had no idea who that was. And I'm like, get on out of here. I don't know who you are. It's like, in retrospect, I think, I talked back to Serapis Bey, so that may not have been a good idea. But I began officially channeling Adironda. And Adironda is a spokesbeing for a council of 12 or more that's actually from the 17th dimension. Now, at the time, I didn't know that there were 17 dimensions. I was not involved in the metaphysics. And I started developing energy work and my own healing practice, as well as my own channeling abilities. When Adironda first came in, it was due to a synchronicity that could only have been orchestrated by the universe. I said, I want to be all that I am, and not knowing exactly what that entailed. Mm-hmm. In retrospect, I might have thought of wording it a little differently, but it was, Adironda, they attempted to get my attention for nearly a year through the numbers. I would see 111 all the time. I'd see 1111. I'd see, I'd be following license plates in the car that was 777, 888, 444. And of course, and then I started having these dreams of this same place over and over, and which was pretty interesting. That I still didn't say, okay, so is somebody out there trying to get my attention? I didn't know to do that. And my stereo started coming on every morning at 4:44 a.m. Now, I listen to NPR, National Public Radio, which is like classical music and, easy listening kind of stuff. And it would come on a rock radio station. I even unplugged it and it would still come on every morning at 4:44. And finally I said, what is this? What do you want? And then I got in my guided writing that there was a being that was attempting to get into contact with me. I'm like, I've seen The Exorcist. I know what can happen. No. So I ignored it. And so they continued to try until finally after 5 speeding tickets and 3 car wrecks in 1 year, I realized I was not really present. And then the universe arranged for me to meet someone that could tell that I wasn't present and actually knew what to do. And they could step my conscious self aside and ask to speak to my higher self or whoever was present. And that was the first time Adironda spoke. And they came in immediately and they said, thank God, we've been trying to get this woman's attention. They are the spokesbeing for a council of 12 or more. And that they said that Marilyn Harper, am an activator, and that we activate people and we will activate people in groups, and that they are here to magnify that activation energy. And because the people on the planet are not quite getting it as quickly as they could due to the fact that it's definitely going to shift, the planet is. And so I had my first group 5 days later. And it was like, we're off and running.
Well, you said something that was really important, I think, is you had mentioned that you were totally open to it as long as they could prove that it was source running through you.
Right.
I feel like that's a big question around this, because a lot of times people do have these sort of fears from watching movies and, like you said, even Exorcist and all this kind of stuff. So just to debunk some of that, or to not necessarily debunk, but to shed some light on that for you, how did you know that what was there was from source?
Well, it's like there are people that believe that everything that's around is a part of source or part of God and all of that. And that may be true, but I've also encountered some energies that I would not necessarily want to choose to encounter again. Not very often, but a few times, enough times that I have a healthy respect. And what, in my guided writing, and that's a technique that I teach in the Channelers Academy, as to really how to get very, very clear, and how to function as ego-free as possible. Mm-hmm. Because I think that is a key in knowing that you are connecting with source, is to let your little inner chatter to be still. And the energy that comes in is such a profoundly different energy when you know that it's source energy coming in than it is with any other energy. It's and my guided writing sort of trained me to feel the different energies and communications. Now, with that, my hand, your hand doesn't move on its own. It's not, you're not going into some trance. It's like transcription. Mm-hmm. And in my transcription or dictation, that's really a better word for it, dictation, I would hear or almost feel or sense the words, and I would write them down. And of course, if you ever have been around cats, I had cats, they're going to be right on top of you whenever you write something. And I said, one of the things that really proved to me that something specific was happening was I set the intention. Okay, so I'm going to put myself into the soundproof bubble, right? And my cats are not going to be able to get into this bubble, and they're not going to be able to walk on here during my meditation. And I thought, that sounds so completely ridiculous. But I set the intention, and my cats would sit on the sofa 2 feet away from me as I was writing the very next day. And so I knew something was going on. And it was such a loving energy. I don't think anything that is separate from source can have that loving energy. When I started channeling, Master Yeshua, or at that time I called him Jesus, is on the council. And so his energy was, and so was Buddha and several others, their energy was so different from my energy that I knew that I was tapping into something that was significant. And when I channeled, it didn't matter in the beginning if there were 3 people in the room, or in later years 1,000 people in the room. The energy in the room completely shifted because of that interdimensional kind of frequency that comes in. So it's like I had to trust it. In the beginning, I was so stubborn. I think, why didn't they just give up on me? Because I didn't believe anything. You got to prove to me in a way that my logical brain can understand, right? and I, they brought me a sign of a feather. So every time I would see a feather, I would know that I was on my right path, on my right track. Have that experience. And I would see feathers in the most odd, unusual places. And just to confirm that something mystical was indeed happening. I mean, I grew up in Kansas in the United States, but I've lived in Missouri since 1984. And so that's the show me state. So you have to prove to me that something's happening. And they certainly did. And, the dreams that I was having when the person first communicated with Adironda, they said, this is what the 17th dimension looks like. And it was an exact description of the dreams that I'd been having for several years. And so again, that showed me that something was happening, something mystical was going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you'd mentioned 17th dimension, and I think this would be something to get some clarity around for people too, is because there's been so much chat about partly that the planet itself is going through a major frequency shift, and around this concept of sort of like a 3-dimensional reality through a 4 to a 5th, and sort of what those actually mean. What do we mean when that the planet is going through a different frequency shift, and how does that then affect the people on the planet, and what's that sort of interrelationship, and what do these dimensions really mean?
That's a great question. And I don't know that anyone can actually completely answer it, because we don't really know. According to this, when I started down this path, I stopped having the ability to actually read books, and I was told that I was not to read anybody else's material, that I was only to go inside. So I can only give you my own perspective. But what I understand is there's 144 dimensions. In recent years, I have probably the last year or two, Adironda has actually mentioned 152 dimensions. Science has actually proven, I think, 13 or 14 different dimensional realms going on simultaneously. That may or may not be related to the fact that the Earth was in the 3rd dimension and has, in my belief system, moved through the 4th dimension, which is the dimension of chaos and change, and is coming out on the other side, which is the fifth dimension, which is the dimension of an enhancement of your own innate abilities, an enhancement of your intuition, your inner sight, your manifestation, your own abilities that we were indeed born with, but because of our sort of limited belief or limited programming when we came into this world, we did not have access to that as much, or didn't believe that we did. In the fifth dimensional realm, we are indeed discovering that we do have access to that, and we can move into that realm with clarity, wisdom, and understanding. Now, that also, that dimension, not everyone on the planet yet can process all of that energy, all of that information that's maybe coming to them from many different aspects. You know, the indigo children and the crystalline children, their sensory input is heightened to such an extent that many can hear a conversation that's going on in the next house, or can hear a spider crawling down the hallway, which that sensory input is so enhanced that sometimes that creates trauma in people, that they don't really know quite what to do with that information, which is why light workers, or as Adirondack calls us, light plurkers, play plus work equals plurk. They're convinced that someday that's going to be in the dictionary. But the light workers, the people that are awake and awakening, whether they are metaphysical, spiritual, or what, or a teacher, they are helping people accommodate this consciousness that is raising into the fifth dimension, or it has raised into the fifth dimension, and we're now sort of finding our balance, now finding our way to survive and to live the most wonderful life. I guess survival is not the correct word, because I believe we are in the fifth dimension. Not everyone does, I know that. But there's been such an influx of naturopaths, healing practitioners, such an influx of solid proof that the energy around us responds to our field of frequency that's really 26 feet across, that as Dr. Emoto proved, that the water responds to human emotion. Well, if the water responds to human emotion, so does everything else. And that is fifth dimensional thinking in my belief system. I think that you know, the trick is, I think science is right now proving those things do exist, that there is a scientific evidence that's proving the field, that's proving that, you know, the water shifts its frequency, that humans are coming in with more of our own innate abilities now than ever before. And I believe that's a frequency of that dimension. I also believe that you can get so caught up in it that you're not living in the now moment. You know, I have people that say, you know, I want to have full remembrance of all my lifetimes, and I want to catapult myself up into the 52nd dimension. And it's like, you know, I don't know that that's a good idea. First of all, to have full remembrance would be a flood of energy and information into your psyche. And, you know, I think that we have to live where we are. As many people say, we are almost visitors to this planet, and we are caretakers of this planet. And you know, and I know you've encountered people that get so far out into other dimensional realms that they kind of forget that our job is right here, right now. Our mission is to help the people and ourselves to understand who they are and to be able to utilize the gifts that I believe that we were given, that are not gifts, that are actually skills. And it's just like with, holographic healing. Um, I thought everybody could do that. I didn't know that not everyone can see or sense into the physical form and place it back into a place of alignment. And I got so busy with clients that I started developing a method of teaching it so other people could do it. Because there's not anything really special about me. I believe if I can do something, anybody can do it. And so I really set about teaching people, because I think that once we all learn who we are, then it will be easier to live at that dimensional level that we are either in or moving into. Does that answer your question? I realize I kind of tap danced around several different possibilities there, but did that answer your question?
No, I think that's good. And it opens up so many different sort of avenues to go a little bit. So
can I ask a question? So you touched on something that I've considered and thought about since I was a kid. Who are we?
Good question. I believe that we are visitors to this planet from somewhere else, that we came to inhabit this planet, and we are just now beginning to recognize that fact. We're going through this renaissance of energy again. Who are we as people? Who are we as humans? I believe that question is such a huge cataclysmic question, because each individual must answer that question for themselves, right? And yet we as a species, as humanity, we have, interestingly enough, when you communicate with people, as I know you do, we have collective memories that are so similar in nature that we know we have been together at some point in some time in some other existence, whether that's dimensionally, interdimensionally, or whether that is on another galaxy or in a collective consciousness. And so I think that the question of who are we not? And I think that is just as important a question as to, we know, we can define our beingness by, I'm this person and I grew up here and I made my living doing this and blah, blah, blah. But who we are is in that central core of our own essence. And our own essence is a I call it a divine essence. And once you can place words to that divine essence, that is a part of the identity of who you are, then that gives you the parameters to follow suit. I used to teach a workshop called Finding Your Divine Essence, and mine is divine inspiration. My business partner, Joy Roby, hers is divine action. So we make a nice team together. And once you can almost place words to that essence, which is a part of the definition to who we are, it sort of expands the perimeters, or maybe that's parameters, that we are all evolving and becoming the beings that we were maybe placed here to be, as we are extending our information and our energy and searching for the definition of who we are, as well as the definition of who we are not. I think that people that have experienced some sort of an awakening or some sort of a transformation, no matter when it was in their life, they have a burning desire to make a difference. More and more people are coming in with that awakened sense, and that is a part of the spiritual quest to find out who we are. Greg Braden does a great talk on the history of humanity and all that is within that humanity, and with research back into the indigenous in all cultures. And it's so fascinating when you look at all the cultures that we can communicate with on this planet, that they all have a similar story of creation, of the seven sisters, of the Pleiades, of beings coming from the stars. And I think that has to be a part of the definition of who we are. That may not answer your question, who are we, but it might give you a little food for fodder, food for thought there.
Well, I think that's part of the fun of it too, is that we're all on this journey, having different experiences that keeps, bringing awarenesses to us as to who we are, right? And I don't really think it ends. I think that's part of the mystery and part of the fun is we keep sort of collecting more information and more awarenesses that helps us fine tune who we are as we sort of step into that more and more throughout our lifetimes. And you had mentioned something around divine purpose, and it's really interesting because I've seen this just even in working with patients over the years, and in different age groups too. And I feel like, the divine purpose, for at least from my perspective, I see that the divine purpose for, say, my grandparents was very different than the divine purpose for my parents, which is very different than it is for me. And I feel like for my grandparents and the experiences that they went through, it's like if they could have a safe home and they could make enough money to get by and have a comfortable life where they were safe and they had their means met, that was it. That was really, and that was their purpose. And they actually lived a very happy, fulfilled life in that aspect. And what I'm seeing now is that and I think because we have different experiences and we've got different information passed down and all of these different things, but now I feel like people are craving a bigger feeling of purpose. It's not just the immediate kind of make sure that we're all okay and we've got our family's safe and that's a part of it, but now it's like, what's speaking to me? What do I want? It's almost like a bigger sense of service to self and to our service to others. It's more like, how do I feel like I'm here for a bigger impact. Have you noticed that as well? That's something that I've seen a lot over the last several years.
Yes, I agree. And as you say, our grandparents and our parents, their purpose transformed, and our parents were like, we've got this home, we've got these jobs, we're good to go, and our kids are safe, and now according to Adironda, the purpose is each person, their purpose is really to find their joy and then to live that joy, and that's their destiny. Because if each person is living their own life in joy, however they define that, then it is that energy in the field goes out, and that begins shifting the consciousness. And imagine what the world would be like if everyone were doing things that they love. We all, have a source of livelihood that we love and that are using our talents, our skills, our gifts, and that time stands still when we're doing it. sort of like you. And, and I think that's our purpose. That is the purpose of each individual, is to find that niche, find that place where you are of service. Deepak Chopra said to his kids one time, I read this somewhere, I don't know where, but or I heard it probably, that he didn't care what his kids did as long as they were of service. And I think that's really the key, is that our purpose is our joy, yet it must be tied to being of service to humanity, or to people, or to animals, or someone in some way. And that, once you can light upon that, there's that feeling of internal self-satisfaction when you do something and you see a job well done, and when you see something that you have created or done and shared with, or experienced, that you see the results of that and good things happen. And I think that's really our purpose, is to find that aspect and then see how you can expand it to assist in the consciousness of your neighborhood, or the consciousness of your neighborhood, which is also the planet. Mm-hmm. I think that's why you're doing what you're doing. I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and probably all of the speakers that you're having on. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And the idea of living your joy totally resonated with
Mm-hmm.
us. I mean, you can maybe talk about.
Yeah, it was, Marilyn, it was probably, no, not probably, it was after the birth of our youngest, Sage. I felt this major sort of discomfort. This was back in 2017. There was something going on. I was either picking up on it, or something was affecting me negatively. Like there was something crawling in my skin. And I actually she's my third, and my breast milk ran out at 2 months. Like, it was high and dry. There was nothing coming out. and I'm sure part of it is actually for me to have built the compassion for other mothers who go through some similar experiences when they're under a lot of stress. But I actually had to take a leave. I actually went on a retreat, and everything that was happening around the world that I was witnessing and hearing about and sensing was really affecting me on a level that I couldn't put words to. All I knew at that time is that I needed to leave and find a bit of space and quiet and figure out what I was feeling, and to sort through all the nuances that were coming up for me. And after probably that time, I went away for 5 days, and meditation, yoga, breath work, walking in nature. And I would ask, there was also dancing that I would partake in. And I know for me, that was so therapeutic. And, as I was dancing, I would swing my arms up in the air and say, like, use me for in whatever capacity that I can be put of use, because I need to be a catalyst for some sort of a positive shift in this world. I can't be a bystander. So please give me messages, tell me what I can do, use me as your vessel. And I get goosebumps even now as I say this, but I came back and the message that came through really strongly at that time was, stop playing small. The time to play small has passed. It's no longer time to play small. Step into your role and step into the essence of who you are. And after I came back from that trip, I was vibrating with energy. Like, I went to that trip completely depleted, literally. And I came back totally revitalized, ready to, my husband and I were staying up till past 3 o'clock in the morning, because we knew that we had to start holding these retreats for people. There was, and you had said joy. I came back and I said, a platform, an experiential platform that people can go, like, step away from their everyday, step away from their family, take the time. And this platform, we're going to call it Adventures in Joy. And the importance of actually feeling joy was, it just came to the forefront over and over again. And since then, I mean, we're examples of this. And the only reason we're here sharing this with everybody else is because we've lived through it. We've experienced it. We've tried it out. We've tested the different trials, and the way that we've been able to make huge changes within a relatively short period of time within our own life, within our own lives, is because we followed our intuition. We've made joy our compass, and that's what we follow. Anything that brings a lot of excitement to us, even with this series that we've put together. I mean, we pulled this together in a few weeks, and pretty much all of the guests that we've reached out to and more have come in and have agreed to be a part of this, because we had this vision that it was something that we needed to do that was going to be important and impactful for people who listened in. And that's what we follow. We basically follow the synchronicities and pay really close attention to what is coming up. And we live a life of service. Like, it feels so fulfilling. It feels so energizing.
Well, and the thing that I think is so neat about things like joy, like I remember when we started thinking about that and really honestly thinking about, well, what actually makes us feel joy? And not only just then what makes us feel it, but how do we actually prioritize that so we let that really guide our life more so than kind of something that we put on the back burner that we hope we can get 2 weeks out of the year or something along those lines. And because all of these other things that need to get done. And I completely empathize with people that there is lots of stuff that needs to get done. But what I think is so powerful is that if we think about these feeling states as being different levels of consciousness, they create a field. And when you're in a different field, your life just looks different, it feels different, and you see different aspects of life around you that you would not see in a different field. So to me, it's like, even though there's certain scary things on a certain physical level that you're going to make changes where it's like, okay, well, this is my joy. So what does that mean? How do I start to add that in and make that bigger so that, like, my life creates more and more of this? Part of it is like, there's an act of faith that goes with it, because you are stepping away from some of the stuff that you know, but because that field is so expansive, the possibilities from that quantum model of infinite possibilities, you're going to step in and get things arriving in you that you would not have if you weren't in that field. So there's a bit of a leap of faith, but you're sort of going into this much larger global pool where you can tap into different things. And it's not just different things, it's different opportunities, and in ways that you would never have been able to think that they would show up until you're in those certain fields.
Yes, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting to me because I know, when I first started down this path, even though my guidance was saying this is what's going to happen, I couldn't think big enough for that. I couldn't fathom it. It was not a part of my old paradigm. Well, as Adirondha says, there is no more paradigm. That you are carving new pathways, new neural pathways in your brain as you are with humanity. And that's really the key, like what you just said. And to know that you have to, I love Adventures in Joy, by the way. That's great. That sometimes you have to pull away and come back into yourself to find out what that joy means, what it looks like. When people ask Adirondha, one of the most asked questions in the world is, what is my life purpose? And Adirondha always says, what is it that you love? And, people say, oh, I love being of service. I love helping people. And it's like, that's not really specific enough. And it really comes down to, but what is it about that truly makes you feel that kind of that warm, fuzzy, empowered, love-filled, accelerated excitement that causes you to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning to do something that causes you. I think Vishen Lakhiani coined the term blissipline.
Yeah.
We've used bliss point and used bliss in several ways because life is simply spiritual equals bliss. But the blissipline that he coined, that phrase, is really where it is. And when you have that excitement, that love for what you're physically doing, what you're physically seeing, what you're physically accomplishing within an ego-free energy, that you would do it no matter what, whether you were getting paid or not. And it's nice to get paid, but it's also nice to realize that sometimes the universe is going to come in and support you, or you'll be supported because of that service, and because you are in that living joy, as it would be. When people ask me, what do I do for my living? I say, I teach people how to be happy, and because that's really the key. And that joy, that's the bliss point. That's the excitement that we are expanding. You are, I am, and some of the other teachers or speakers that I know that you're having involved in your series, I'm like thinking, some of them don't ever do these at all with anybody. So you must be pretty significant, and you must be the ones that are making a difference and doing it in a different way. And so that's really powerful, and that's surprising in that expansion of the energy that's coming in right now. And this 2021, this coming year or 3 years, we're moving into that frequency of elevation, that quickening of our heart center, that quickening of our expanded abilities, that quickening of our inner sight and our external sight, to see humanity with that compassionate love that in the past you may have only seen what was physically in front of you. And that's it's so cool. It's so exciting to see you come out and say, okay, my life is changing. I just had my third child. I need to get away and have almost a rebirthing, a consciousness being lifted to help you drive the wagon, help you drive in a different way than others maybe are driving you, because everybody on the planet gets to wake up. So it takes us all.
Can I ask you a specific question? Because I've wondered this. So I have 3 children, first of whom I birthed about 16 years ago. And I remember with each and every single birth, my life has totally shifted. So with my first child, right after giving birth, like at that moment when I birthed him, I knew that my marriage at the time was over. I knew, like, with great clarity. And with each subsequent child, there's been deep lessons that have come through within that window of carrying the baby and birthing the baby. I don't know, like, I've thought, like, are there portals that I step into where this incoming soul is coming through me, so therefore I'm more open to and more receptive to that field? Or could you speak of that? Is there anything to it?
I believe that you're exactly right. There is something to it. And I believe that children are our greatest teachers. And they are turning points in our existence. And they select us as parents, and they come in with a specific mission to clear something in the past, to acknowledge something, to teach you something, to take your life and move it into a new direction. And a portal, that's a great way to describe it, or a vortex, where they're coming in through that spiraling vortex, and they're out there in the universe saying, oh, that's the one I'm going to work with this time. I like that. and they come in with that frequency that will help their parents. And I believe it's happening more and more that way. You may have been maybe ahead of your time with your oldest, but maybe not, I don't know. That when we have that turning point, and us as mothers, we feel this life that is within us, that somehow, through what only has to be a miraculous connection with two people, that this new life is formed, or this old life returns. And that they have chosen this relationship with you at this point in time to help you on your evolutionary path, and to know that certain that, okay, so we're closing this chapter and we're maybe starting a whole new book, opening a whole new level. That I believe children do that with us, and it doesn't always happen. I think the more awakened we are, the more we're aware of that. Yet I know people that are just going about their life and are not thinking of being awakened or not awakened, and they give birth and they see the difference in the young that are being born over the next last 20 or 30 years. And they are also changed. Whether they're aware of that change or not, I don't know. I think they are, but they are. But I believe that you're right. I believe that the child comes to you to help you experience, I call it turning point, a turning point in your world. You were going along down this path, and then with this new development, this vortex of love that comes in the form of a person, that path turns, and then you're going down this path, and then till that vortex of love comes in again in the form of a little person, and then there's another turning point. And I believe that's exactly right. And I think that that's one of the things. I know people get so caught up in patriarchal and matriarchal and blah 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 that, it's ridiculous. Quit labeling it. By the label itself, you're limiting it. And but we are a part of that evolutionary path to help humanity come in, evolve, be born with new skills. So when you stop and think that if every child being born is a turning point in their parents' life, what does that all mean? It can get pretty exciting. And I love to think of the possibility that with every new life, that the people that were involved in providing that new life with its spark of essence, that they are a part of that transformative energy that's coming into the planet now, and to assist and to serve. So yeah, I think you're right on there. I think that that's exactly what happens.
And what's beautiful, when you were talking about feathers earlier, our daughters are 3 and 4-year-old. They bring us feathers that they find
every morning,
almost every morning, or at some point during the day, they'll find feathers. And I initially, when they first brought it to me, I said, oh, it's so beautiful. It looks like angel wings. And every day now they come to me and say, look, angels have been here.
Yeah.
I love that.
We've got a collection building in the drawer now. Yeah. So
It is amazing that I love the angel wings definition of them. I had never put that together, but yeah, that's great. And you know, those are our kids. They see it, they get it, they know. I mean, I have a great grandson that is like, how does he know how to work technology already?
I know. Yeah. Marilyn, you were talking about numbers a little while ago, and this is a really neat one. I find this a really exciting one too. And so you wrote a book called Double Digitology that we'll talk about in a sec here. And about, gosh, it was probably about 12 years ago, maybe.
Well, even your birth date.
Yeah, even my birthday is 0222. I'm February 22nd, 1972. And when I read what that means, it's like, it's so bang on in so many ways. Like when I look at it astrologically, like right to the day and the time. But about 10 to 12 years ago, I was doing a lot of more really interested in spirituality and diving into my spiritual practice a lot more and doing a lot more alone time and quiet time and nature and meditation and all this sort of stuff. And I was getting guidance from some other people that were helping a lot as well. And literally, I was seeing 1111 and 222s everywhere, like to the point that it actually started to freak me out a little bit. I'd open up my email. I have, like, no joke, 5 emails that were all arrived at 1111 and emails that were arriving at 222. And I remember thinking, like, people are playing a joke with me somewhere. Like, and other than the fact that there just was this resonance of something really important going on. And again, like you'd say, I'd see, you know, it'd be driving and randomly I'd happen to look somewhere and, oh, just the number on the side of the road was 222 or the license plate was 222. And we're even getting people emailing us talking a little bit about, I'm kind of feeling a little bit weird about this, but I'm seeing these number sequences showing up and it's like, yeah, these are important. And so take it away, because you wrote a book on it, and I'm wondering if you can just break down what these things mean, why they're important, and maybe some of the different sequences on what they actually represent.
Well, I did write a book on it. I just happen to have it right here.
Yeah, when I saw that, I just had a big smile. I'm like, well, I got to read that.
And it's short.
Yeah, it's an easy read.
It's an easy read. You know, it's fascinating to me how I believe source, the universe, whatever you call that energy that is within us and all around us, that they really do work hard to get our attention. And they do it through that universal language, which I call numbers, or we all call numbers. You know, and each number sequence has its own particular format. 1111, 111, you know, when you see sequences of ones, that is like an instant snapshot of your thoughts. I do, most days I do a broadcast live on Facebook at 11:11 Central Time, and, you know, say a little prayer of gratitude for the planet, because it's an instant snapshot of our thoughts. You know, those 11s are also 1111, or whatever. They are new ideas and new frequencies, as in numerology. But Adironda, interestingly enough, takes it a step further and looks at the physicality of the number. And the 1 is that number of courage, that number of strength to stand alone without any visible foundation and forge forward into whatever the life purpose is. And when you see that sequence of numbers, 1111, that magnifies that energy. If you have, you know, the same with 222, you know, when you have all those 2s lined up, the 2 by itself is, of course, divine partnership. And 22 together make that divine partnership into the master builder. And when you have 222, that takes that master builder and exponentially broadens the spectrum, that you are building something that is larger than yourself, larger than you and your sweetheart, larger than you and your business partner or whatever. And that you've got that really, as you look at the physical number, you've got that really strong, according to Rhonda, that really strong foundation that you can hardly fall over. You have to work at it to not be successful. And so you've got that strong foundation across the bottom, and the 222 is then looking sort of towards the future, is sort of arcing the energy to connect with others and assist in that foundation. And the numbers, I love it, and I love it that Rhonda, through our channeled messages, we do a monthly broadcast. We just did the 12/12 at the recording of this, and it was those numbers play such an important role. And I hear it all the time, like you. I hear people automatically, they start saying 111 and 222, and those that have those numbers in their birth sign, like you, or their numerology, that they are on a different path, a more specific path. For me, I'm 3/11/52, so my birth all lines up. My birth, my name, my spiritual name, everything, my married name, everything, all adds up to an 11/7/22. So I've got my life path is an 11 or it's a 22, depending on how you look at it. So, all of those numbers come into play with our purpose, with our divine guidance. And if we pay attention to them, that we can glean a more profound realization of that age-old question, who are we? And a more profound acknowledging of, you've got, Dr. Loken, you've got the 222s coming in and the 111s coming in. So you are indeed standing alone in your courage, but you've also got that divine partnership and master building to do something more significant with your life than have a private practice, and which there's nothing wrong with having a private practice. It's a powerful sense for that. So understand that energy. Can you tell I get excited about it? But the numbers, each sequence of the master numbers carry a specific message in numerology, as well as in our information, the physicality of the number. The numbers are really universal in the way they're written. You can go to any country in the world and they will have those same numbers. So it's like music. It's like an international language that people are connecting with. And that frequency of, divine partnership or master builder or expansion in that building is something that's very powerful. A lot of times people will see 777 when they start waking up, and 777 is probably the most spiritual of all the numbers. And it is about being a spiritual teacher and about enhancing that energy. So each number carries that sort of frequency. And then when you capitalize with the physicality on that, with the way the number looks, and take that into a part of the definition, it gets pretty exciting. And as you say, with you look at your birth date, that particularly defines who you are. And not that definition was made before you came in, maybe it was. You chose that. So therefore, then your quest is to find that joy that is supported by that numerological foundation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's been such a neat transition. Like when those numbers were coming up, that was when I actually was writing a book with a co-author of mine that was called Letters That Move the World, Intentional Acts of Gratitude, which was around creating a focus moment for positive shift in the world where people are, and the date that we had set originally, and it comes to mind more now as you're saying, it was January 7th. That was the release date where everybody actually shared their letters at the same time. So we kind of created this vision of letters going all over the world and people receiving and sending gratitude and being filled up and receiving it and then sharing it kind of collectively, right? To see if we could create a focus moment for change. This year we're doing it's spread between December 21st right through till January 7th to see if we can kind of stretch it out for this period of time. And so, yeah, I'll make sure you get a copy of the book because I think you'll. Oh yeah, I think we sent you one. So
yeah, thank you. It's wonderful.
But yeah, you'll kind of get the feel for that. But it also reiterates why January 7th is such a spiritual number. And I know for my co-author, sevens were really her main number that she would get lots. So that was kind of where that came from. So it's just really neat. And even like the idea of expansion, it's like, I really enjoyed being in clinical practice and still do some clinical practice, but the motivation, I shouldn't even say the inspiration underneath was just to keep expanding to something larger and bigger and to have a larger outreach. That's really been it. And so as much as clinical practice can be rewarding, it's even more rewarding in my mind to do stuff that outreaches to even a larger group.
Yes, and I think that's kind of the premise now is, as you say, who are we? And as you bring that energy in, that we're all a part of that answer, and we're all connecting with that, and we're putting those jigsaw puzzle pieces together to take our numerological date, to take our life purpose or our destiny number or our personality number, and put them all together. And then when we start seeing those sequences, that is the power for it. I mean, we launched our book, of course, because as you see, we launched it on 11/11. It's been many years in the making, but it has that freak sequence of information. And I think that anywhere you can get some answers that resonate with you. You asked, how do you know?
Yeah.
And how do you know that the answers you're being given are not from your ego, are not from that little chattery voice that talks to you and tells you how much you can't do something, or tells you how you're going to change the world because you're going to be a world famous speaker, and all of that. But I think that there's like a specific frequency that carries through with that love energy, that truth that is the bliss point, as we call it, that carries, that once you feel it, once you identify it, you can always return to it and use that as your sounding block, use that as your medium line. And I think that there is that specific place for each individual that they can acknowledge that, and they can find that place within themselves of knowing that they get the opportunity to turn a corner in their life and do something differently, and that the people that know them and love them will love them regardless. So many times I think that we hold ourselves back, as you said, keep ourselves small by the feeling of judgment of others. And that doesn't really serve. That with others in your life that love you, they will love you no matter what. I had to stop and think of my parents, who I grew up in Kansas. I mean, Miss Normal there, Miss Average person. My dad ran the local lumber yard, and my mom was president of the Christian Women's Fellowship Group my whole life. And their my concern of what they would think of what I was doing held me back for a lot of years. And because I had to think, what are they going to think? If I'm a channel, they don't even have any place to put that term. And it was actually my mother, when she was 95 or 94, said, what I do is to communicate with people that in a different way than what other people communicate with people, to bring them messages for their own soul. And that's kind of what we're all doing. And, it took somebody that was 90 something years old to coin that phrase. And we're all doing that. And we're all helping this planet in that capacity, be it through the numbers, through this, or through your work, and a clinical practice. And that may be what it is. Like I look at, a person that cleans houses, which to me, that's not my reality at all. And I asked a friend of mine that's what she wants to do. And she says, I love making sacred spaces.
Yeah.
And it's like, isn't the world a cool place that has people that have their love, their joy, and it fills all these different niches, so we all fit together in a wonderful puzzle.
I think what's beautiful too, Marilyn, is even this talk or information about numerology, and even what you're sharing with regards to our innate superpowers. I think what it has the capacity to do for people when they're open to it is that it allows us to know that we're not alone. There is a connection to source. There's a connection to realms that are beyond our current understanding at this time. But this is the realm that we're moving into, and we are held, we are supported, we are looked after, we do care for each other. And it's a really comforting knowing all of that.
And that's why I think that this is such a great venue, a great format, is because with COVID, we have gone introspective, and we've learned to do things in a different capacity. And as a result, we've been able to expand a global audience to know we still will have in-person events and things, because we've discovered we are social humans. We need to know that we're not flapping about there on our own in the wind, that there are other people that are feeling the same way, that are experiencing the same things, that are searching for those same answers. And it's such an amazing phenomenon when we all come together and see that and experience that. And whether it's virtually in this kind of a setting or come together physically, it's so, we used to have a conference called Walk-ins Welcome. And then we changed it to Visionaries in Light. Yeah, it was fun. We invited walk-ins from all over the world. And then we realized that was a limiting term, and we had to make it Visionaries. But it was like a family reunion. It was like, I loved it. It was like people that had never physically met in this dimension. They would see each other and they would hug and take their families together on vacation the next year. It was such an amazing experience. And that's what we're all doing now, is we're all sort of surrounding the world with these big arms of love to say, let's find all these people that are out there maybe feeling like they're alone, and let them know that there's other people that feel alone. And when two people that are feeling alone come together, they're no longer alone. And miraculous things happen. And it's such a wonderful service that you all are providing, and that we're all providing.
And Marilyn, you mentioned COVID. So why don't we mention just around 2020, like big picture, not to take away from the hardships and the challenges and the craziness that has gone on over 2020, but is there a larger perspective that we can look at it? And even I'm wondering, like, do the numbers, even as far as the numbers, and what do they represent numerology wise for 2020? I'm just kind of curious as far as big perspective. What are we learning with 2020, or what's the potential to learn with what's going on?
Well, 2020 is, when you add up the numbers, they add up to a 4, which is about finding a new way of balancing. It's about finding a new structure. It's about asymmetrical, something that's completely out of balance, coming into new organization and structure. So 2020 is about that. COVID-19, new beginnings. 1 and 9 together make a 10, which is new beginnings at 1, and the 0, which most people don't count that as anything. The 0 is source, which is all things. This is a year of a global reset. This is a year of things that are not in integrity coming to a place of light, coming to a place of implosion almost, so it can come into integrity. I believe that when we began with the COVID, I was in Mexico doing a 3-day, 4-day event. And when we left, everything was normal. And when we came back, they closed the borders the day after we got back. And it was like, whoa, what happened? And I believe that humanity was being taken inside so they could learn to appreciate the simplicity of life and not the extravagance of life, and to appreciate their families. I talked to families that never were together, that they all had their own lives and all separately, that teenagers they would all sit down to dinner together and play games and talk and explore each other's lives again. That would not have happened without COVID. We would not be communicating, very likely, without us all going into that virtual reality place of Zoom or some other format. And how this is the first time in human history, if not, according to Adironda, all of the galaxies, that an entire planet and all of its people are being affected by one thing. Yeah. And that synergy, that movement of that energy raises the evolutionary chain, raises the frequency in an exponential way, in a surprising way. And because of that, things are changing very rapidly. So it's no accident that you've got a series that's starting on the 21st through the 7th. That gratitude is like, woohoo! And that gratitude is the abracadabra of the universe. It really is a part of that energy. And when through this environment, we are having a global reset. It's like an upgrade. As we say, because the people were not quite moving or shifting at the way that they could have been as quickly as what will be necessary for the interdimensional transition that we are all going through. That with that, it's caused all of the planet to refocus. It's caused all of the planet to question the pharmaceutical companies that are making a vaccine that may or may not be safe, to question the leaders of the nations to think, well, why are you doing what you're doing? To question that to realize to not pass judgment on someone that feels the need to mask up or not mask up. That it has helped humanity, hopefully, to learn that we are a compassionate species at our core. And this has caused us to have an international reset and to upgrade our own abilities and upgrade how we perceive all of humanity. I mean, it's just like, with the election in the United States that just happened. We've never had so many people come out to voice their opinion. It doesn't matter who's right, who's wrong. We're not getting into that. But we've never had so many people feel so passionately about it that they actually said, I'm going to make a difference. And that is sort of the results of COVID-19, which is the 19 being that new beginnings, where you take source and the energy of standing strong as a pillar of strength and move it together to form a new humanity. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. That's the tipping point that we're in. It's like we're giving birth to ourselves. So the turning point, the tipping point, is coming in rapid excitement. And I know with the pandemic, there have been so many opportunities that have come up that we would never have encountered. I speak at traditional churches sometimes, and I was on Zoom right now, and I was doing so at a Unity church a couple of weeks ago. And, I just posted the link out on Facebook. It's just kind of what I do. We had people from all over the world coming in for a spiritual inspiration. Mm-hmm. That would never have happened had it not been for the pandemic. And so we have to look at the good things that are coming from it. Yes, my son, his family, they're struggling, and people are struggling all over the world because they've lost their jobs, or they're lost their home, or whatever. I think that's where we get to upgrade. That's where we get to reset. I was talking with someone else here I live in Branson, Missouri, which you're possibly not aware that it is a performance capital of the world, I like to think. That there's like 113 live theatrical shows going on at any given day. And so we have more full-time performers here than they do have on Broadway in New York. And all of a sudden they can't have the shows, or they can have less than half of the audience, and people are not coming. And so what do? So you get the opportunity to punt. You get the opportunity to see where is the next avenue, to see where is the next turning point, just like you said when you had your child, or your children, that you have a turning point, and you get the opportunity, you have a choice to step into that new space or try to do things the way they've always been done. And we can't do that. We get the opportunity to step into that new space, sometimes with our eyes closed, because we don't know what's going on. It's like, what is it? Indiana Jones in the Holy Grail movie, where he stepped out and the path did not appear until he actually stepped on it. And that's what we're doing, is we're stepping on that path. And it's exciting to think that we all chose to be here at this time. And it's exciting to think that with this global pandemic, I don't think we ever even knew what the word pandemic was until this. But with this global reset, that we are stepping into new territory as a planet, not just as the people in this country or this state or that province, but as a planet. And that is, to me, embracing the fifth dimensional living.
Beautifully. Well put, Marilyn.
Oh, beautiful.
One thing I would love to talk a little bit about too, if you're still okay for time here.
Yes.
I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on where you feel like even medicine is transitioning to, because I got to check out your course that you did on that, because I know from my experience, I'm a naturopathic doctor and I'm an osteopath. So it's like I also do a lot of hands-on work where we would work with the body. And a lot of osteopathy is feeling things, but a lot of it is what we are visualizing and imagining as far as what's going on in our heads when we're working with the body. And I was doing an interview a while back with Hawaiian shamanism, and he was saying that sounds a lot like shamanism, because you're doing a lot of sort of thinking and picturing and visualizing, and the power of thought in that word, in the power of imagination. And I started to kind of find like, I don't even have to be on the body to be able to even do that. I can sit at home. And then we ended up doing a course on the Silva method. And a big part of the Silva method is actually getting into a certain brainwave state and then going into what we would call like our lab, where we would then actually pull up a hologram of ourselves or other people, and then work on the person or on ourselves in that regard. And it's really quite amazing what can take place when we do that. So that's my 4-year-old my 3-year-old who just ran in right now. So
I could tell a little person just came into the frame.
Yeah, very little person. And so it's just really fascinating to me that, I feel like as we kind of move from this, and even what I see in clinic, it originally was so much like, let's work on this physical level. So what can I take? What can I do? What sort of physical kind of treatment do I need to make some changes? And the more we kind of expand this and understand the role of like the vital body, when we look at things like Chinese medicine and meridians and chakras and how thoughts impact this, and when we connect to aspects of spirit and just how all of this stuff filters down and then ultimately affects the physical body. And this is what I've been seeing in practice, and sort of this shift that's been taking place in a lot of ways, and bringing more awareness to how some of the more subtle energetic therapies can have quite dramatic effects on the physical body. So I'm wondering if you can share your experience with that a little bit.
Well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. I am not a doctor of anything. I'm not medically oriented in this lifetime.
Well, and I'll just preface that sometimes the best healers are not actually doctors.
That is true. I mean, there was more money spent in the last few years in alternative healthcare than there was in traditional healthcare, which I love that fact. And it's so interesting how all of this came about. Was when I became a Reiki master, I realized that I had the capability to actually see, there's a fine line between seeing and sensing into the form, and be able to rearrange it to come back into a place of existence or alignment. And people, we straightened spines from scoliosis. We solved digestive issues, all with intention, all with that form. And science was not proving it at that time. This was 21, 22 years ago. And now science is proving that, my life kind of really took a big turn when I became familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, Messages from the Water. And, and we sell cobalt blue bottles now with a message engraved on them.
Yeah.
But my thought was, well, if water responds to human emotion and the body is a lot of water, then that will respond to human emotion as well. And so I began, and with my channeled work, Adirondack can see into people's bodies, and they say that I am the healer, and they just magnify that energy. But holographic healing really came about with the mother of necessity, the need for to help people. And it is, I believe many of these techniques are all very, very similar. And I'm not as scientifically based as others. However, the results are still the same. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. As you say, you can work with someone, as I have done, that is nearly blind with macular degeneration, and work with them, and they're several hours away in virtual experience, and work with clearing and cleaning and refurbishing the macula in their eyes so they can drive and see. It sounds like a miracle. However, it's not. It's a part of our innate abilities. And, if you're a religious person, Master Yeshua or Jesus, he said, y'all can do greater things than what I can do. And the difference is he came in knowing who he was. And we're still discovering, at least that's what he says. He's on the council. So he does speak independently some. And in that capacity, the healing aspect of intention is so powerful that with that intention, people can indeed heal themselves. They can reorganize their bodies. They can actually shift their own consciousness enough. And sometimes it may take a facilitator outside, simply because, as you know, the plumber has the worst pipes in town because they have trouble working on their own stuff. It's difficult to see into your own self, maybe. Mm-hmm. But with others, I know I have seen miraculous results that are not miraculous because it is based on the energy of gratitude, intention, and the innate ability of inner sight or inner sense. And that energy, as it's coming through, that's, to me, it may be a part of the fifth dimension, or maybe not, who knows? And we may have always had this ability, because in the times past, they didn't coin that phrase quite as much of being an alternative healthcare practitioner. They were simply healers. Yeah. Now, to me, the healer is actually the person that's receiving the energy, and the practitioner is the person that's sort of directing that energy. But you're right, Dr. Loken, I know that the information that's coming through, and it's coming through across the plane, it's coming through across the planet, that the development of new techniques and new ideas. I mean, I've seen broken bones be mended. Someone asked me yesterday, we did a webinar this past week, and they asked if we could regenerate. They lost muscle in their leg because due to a cancer. They asked if through holographic healing, could we regenerate muscle? Sure. Why not? I don't know. I've never tried it. Let's try it and find out and see. And I think that's the difference between the scientific doctors, as you're well aware of, with that scientific knowledge, science or medical professionals would probably say, no, it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
But with intention and with focus and with, everything is possible these days. Everything. And so with that possibility, why wouldn't it be possible? I mean, it's possible to take two bones and graft them together and tape them and have them grow together. At one point, we didn't think that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that it is. And that's been around for a long time. What's the difference? When you take someone that has a cancer polyp in their uterus, or where, I've worked with several people like that with your intention of realigning the body and returning it to its original form of health, and they go back to the doctor and there's no polyp there, and they say, well, what did you do? One day we will be able to explain that to the doctors. I mean, and they'll say, that's great, let me find out about that. I know that that's possible. And so, but it's taking, like, there's more and more doctors such as yourself that are looking into alternative forms of energetic healing. And it is really, I believe that Louise Hay had it right. The body wants to be in alignment. The body wants to be in that perfection of physicality. And with your own intention and your own creativity and your own visualized sight, you can place it back into that form of alignment. And if it doesn't seem to be happening like you think that it ought to, then you get the opportunity to look at other things, other reasons, other possibilities to see why this happened to this person and what possible good can come from it. I think of, Christopher Reeves. You're probably too young to remember the original.
I know the Superman movies.
Okay, okay. But he was Superman and he became a quadriplegic. But he also changed the way humanity dealt with people that were handicapped. He shifted that whole consciousness. And Michael J. Fox, he had Parkinson's, has Parkinson's. He caused humanity to pay attention to that. And, with what's happening on the world, we're causing humanity to pay attention to new things and new aspects and new possibilities. That if you can, if I can protect myself with a force field that keeps my cats out of my space while I'm writing in my journal, everything is possible.
I love it. I absolutely think that it's the more that we can just let our ideas of what we think is factual and the only things that are possible, and just keep, we'll play a game all the time when we talk about, well, what if? Mm-hmm. What if this or that? What if this or that? Because it's a gentle way, even if our beliefs are not quite there yet, it lets us gently keep expanding them and working with them and stretching them. And it makes it fun and playful and curious. And rather than stating something that maybe I don't totally agree with 100% because I'm not quite there yet, but if I can be like, well, what if this? What would that look like? Well, and then we just start to play, and before you know it, you're having fun with something. It's playful, and you're expanding like a child would with this sort of limitless imagination. And that's the only way that we're going to create those things, is by allowing our imagination to expand to a point where it becomes a possibility, and then likely we will eventually catch up with it.
And it's not like we're not faced with challenges either, because we, like everybody else, have our share of challenges. Myself personally, I had a diagnosis for a severe meniscus tear last year. And I basically had to go in and see if surgery needed to happen and to what degree it would be. And I definitely needed, according to the surgeon whom I spoke with, I needed to have surgery performed on it at that time. And I came home and I thought, well, you know, I was teaching yoga at the time, teaching meditation, and I wasn't able to demonstrate anything anymore. I wasn't even able to sit cross-legged in seiza. I wasn't able to, it had affected my mobility to a large extent. And I decided, you know what if I could just start to visualize and see my body as a miraculous vessel and start to breathe energy into it and visualize during my meditation that energy is just streaming in through that area. And, you know, I can attest to it. I have full mobility now. Like within a couple of months, I'm able to walk perfectly, sit perfectly, do my yoga postures, and I have no need to go back and take the x-rays or do the MRI to see like what has actually gone on with my body. I just know that anything and everything that I want to do within my body is perfectly healthy. And so it does absolutely happen when we have that faith and we have that openness to start to experience fullness, health, vitality within our body. It's pretty amazing at what our body is here to teach us.
It is amazing what our bodies will do for us. And you know, sometimes people that have that illness, as I said, there's a reason for that. A friend of mine was diagnosed with supposedly a very fast moving cancer. And the doctor said, you know, you've got like 6 months or maybe 6 weeks. And she says, well, that's not my reality. And she brought to the doctor that was in a tiny town in Oklahoma, you know, the possibility of aromatherapy, carrying stones, a shamanic practice of healing, an intention of healing, and to where when she was done seeing this doctor, he was wearing stones, he was teaching his clients about aromatherapy, and he left that tiny town and became head of one of the largest cancer centers in the country. And so he's bringing that knowledge to his work now. And you've heard, you know, over the past several years, they've had a spiritual kind of awakening in centers that were to help people that have been diagnosed with cancer. And they've brought in the whole spiritual aspect. And, you know, I attribute that to people like my friend that made a difference in some doctor's life somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening. You know, I know people that have had problems with their heart and have had alternative treatments, and they go back to the doctor and the doctor said, what happened? You know, and it is continuing to grow in that capacity. So yay, how exciting is that? And we're all doing it. We're all, you know, holographic healing, unity field healing, quantum touch, you know, reconnective therapy, all the body talk of,
Yeah.
I can go on and on and on. And they're all working on the same basic premise. But that's why they make chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, this ascension that we're speaking of, is ascension mean spiritual awakening, connection with spirit, or is that not necessarily one and the same?
You know, there's a whole bunch of discussion on that. People tell me all the time, I just want to ascend. And in my definition of ascension is when I leave my physical form and go into another dimensional realm. So I don't think that's necessarily what they mean. I think that it is really more of an awakening. It is a reckoning, a connectedness to your own higher self. And I believe that's what we're talking about. You know, there's so many different definitions of ascension and different connotations that come in with such a simple word. You know, the saints ascended, you know, when they died, and the humans may not do that until they leave their bodies. But we have that the ascension as could be defined is the recognition that the higher or the expanded intelligence is within our grasp, is acknowledged and innate within ourselves. That is really what people are asking for when they ask for ascension, I believe.
Okay. Marilyn, we'll wrap everything up here now, but I'm wondering if there's have you had any information from Adironda or anything that you've downloaded as far as for what we're kind of moving towards in 2021? 2020, we're getting close to being done. Do you see anything that would be beneficial for people to know as far as moving into 2021? And also what your vision for 2021 would be?
We are in a new renaissance. We are moving into a period that is igniting with the tail end of 2020 and with astrological, and we don't follow all that, but with what's happening planetary wise, galactic wise, star wise, we are moving into a time where new perceptions are becoming ordinary perceptions, where new miracles that were at one time considered only to be experienced by a few will become commonplace. We are the last time we were in a Renaissance period was in the 13, 14, 1500s of the world. And when you stop and think of how much things shifted in the following 200 years, and then in the following 200 years after that, and we continue, that's what we're stepping into in 2021. The number 2021 adds up to a 5. So that is change. That is finding a new balance. That is increased sensitivity. That is increased sensuality. So our senses are coming into play in a much stronger fashion. 5 is also about balance. It's got that rolly bottom on it. That's no foundation there. We're just going one way or another. But it's got a very strong headline that's focused on a spiritual growth, much like the 7. And with that energy, it incorporates many different aspects of other numbers, which is where the change comes in. According to some, when they see multiples of 5, that's a bumpy change. That to me is just a big transformation. And that's where we are going into 2021. We're going into, according to our information, a 3-year cycle of change. That is really, we've come from a 3-year cycle of change from 2017 until now. And that acknowledgement of this changing year, we will find our own balance. We will find our own method of trust. We will find the perceptions that at one point seemed like science fiction are now happening all around us. And to me, that's what 2021 is an ignition of. And actually, it starts at the end of 2020. And with that ignition, it is like we are being pulled back with a proverbial slingshot and let go of. So we are soaring beyond all this little nitty gritty turmoil of reorganization in 2020 into that frequency of the future, into that acknowledgement of the human body having the control over itself to realign itself, just like your knee did, just like your meniscus did. That the human form and human intention can create anything you're choosing. And with you, if you're thinking of the negative, then that's what you're creating. When you're thinking of the positive, then that's what you're creating. And that is coming more into that reality. According to Adironda, they said that the fifth dimension was one where it was instant manifestation, where you have, so if you want a hot fudge sundae, you would hold out your hand and a hot fudge sundae would appear. And that's not necessarily what they meant. That meant that if you wanted a hot fudge sundae and you felt that energy, then somebody would come by and say, hey, I'm getting ready to go to the ice cream store. I'll buy you one. And that's what's happening now. If you want to be healthier, start visualizing yourself being healthier. If you want to be stronger, start visualizing yourself being stronger, and know that your psyche, your humanness, visualizing it is a part of it, but you also get the opportunity to take action. And I think that's what 2021 is all about, is seeing an upsurgence of humanity taking back their control, taking back and not being as victimized by some of the leaders, and being in control of what their life is coming into. And I think that's the time period that we're going into. In 2021, it may feel a little rocky at times, but I think all in all, the upsurgence of a new renaissance, the age of Aquarius, the age of intuition, the age of being fluid is upon us. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it really is exciting times. And I'm really fortunate, feel very fortunate to be a part of this transition and being alive even at this time to see it all take place and to meet such wonderful people like yourself and this community that is sharing messages that I think have so much hopefulness and joy and progression for people to pay attention to, and it just eases the road, I think, for everyone. So
Marilyn, is there anything else you would want to share?
You could get my book on Amazon.
It really is a great book for people. Like I was saying to Taya, it's like there's been I feel like more about numerology this past year that keeps coming up than I've heard in probably the last couple of decades. And I feel like because it is coming up for lots of different people, and if you're wanting to pay attention to something, that's in every time they come up for me now, it feels like I'm getting direct line from source that is just kind of letting me know I'm on path, or to relook at where I'm at and to think about things or to be aware of what's going on. And your book is a really great way of just, here's kind of how it breaks down. And you go through all the numbers. It's an easy read. It doesn't get too complicated. I feel like for people that want to learn more about this that they haven't, your book's a perfect intro book. That's not even just an intro, because it goes in beyond what the classical numerology is about. But I thought it was great. It's an easy read, and you present things in such a fun and enjoyable, light way too, that makes everything very digestible.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. Adironda, in their information, they are, they discovered a long time ago that when people laugh, that their heart chakra immediately opens and their own guidance can come in and do the work that's necessary. So they are pretty basic, pretty lighthearted. They don't get really complicated with things. And, thank you for that. I really appreciate your endorsement of that. I hopefully have my next book coming out on holographic healing next year, the first of the year, the first couple of months anyway. Holographic healing, one woman's journey, that where we've taken a case study, and when I walked in, I used to, in my former lifetime, in this lifetime, I was an English teacher, and after I transformed, I couldn't even write in English any longer or speak it correctly. And so I'm just now beginning to try to channel that inner writing person that I know has to be there somewhere. And so, I'm just thankful to be able to be here with you, and to know that I teach people Channelers Academy. In December, we had 10 debut channels on our double digit, which was so exciting, and new channels in the world, because we all have that frequency of tapping into that energy now, and sometimes it takes a little honing of those skills to get that to come out. So I'm just thrilled to be here with you. I'm honored, I'm thankful, I'm humbled, and I'm excited to see what all we can do together again.
Oh, I totally agree. Where can we send people to learn more about your work? We'll make sure we've got all the links in our show notes, but for people that want to learn more, where they can get the book, where they can look at your courses, where can we send them?
Well, thank you so much for asking. Adironda.com, that's ADIRONNDA.com is my website. If you forget that, it's also MarilynHarper.com, which is a lot easier to remember. And, if you Google Chandler's Academy or holographic healing, theoretically, I'm supposed to come up in the search engines. You never know about that. But Adironda.com, I have a website. I teach all kinds of classes. I travel. When we traveled with Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. And so, we're hopefully going to be doing that again in 2021. That's what they keep telling us. In 2021, we will start traveling again, and we'll be meeting people in person. And if not, until then, we'll be teaching as many courses as we can online. So
wonderful. We actually hope to see you in Mount Shasta in 2021.
Oh, yay! That will be wonderful.
We'd
yes,
love to make
we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah,
we will. It's all
right.
an intention, right?
Yeah. Marilyn, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest in your health and well-being. Since this podcast is brand new, reviews and subscribers are so vital for us to get off the ground and share this really important information. So if you found this information valuable, please post a review and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get our newest episodes. Also, if you know of someone who would benefit from this, please share it with them. You can also find us on Instagram at #InspireHealthPodcast. If you have a question that you'd like to be addressed, direct message me on Instagram or leave a comment on one of my posts. I would love to hear from you. And you can grab our show notes and free resources for each episode at InspireHealthPodcast.com. So be sure to go online and check it out.